Are you interested to know more about Cuba, its people, from someone directly from Cuba? Stay tuned for this episode of Spearlift. Gladys, from your perspective, what is one of the most common misconceptions that foreigners have of Cuba and its people?
Well, I think that people have this idea of Cuba being medical. The way the Cuban government sells propaganda about Cuba is by saying that Cuba is una ciencia médica, like a medical emporium, that plus the population doesn't have to pay money to the hospitals or the doctors, that everything is just fantastic, that everything is state of the art. It's a misconception, and that the Cuban people are very happy with their government. That is the biggest misconception. The Cuban people have become slaves, second and third class citizens, and basically it's a system in which the military and the people that have high positions in the Communist Party are the only ones that have access to good food, tourist facilities, international travel. But the Cuban people, which is 99% of the population, they cannot. For almost 50 years, the Cuban people have an apartheid, and they were not allowed to use their tourist facilities. The Cuban people could not enter the hotels. They could not travel outside Cuba. They could not have a passport. Some people are not free. That's the biggest misconception. The people outside Cuba think that the people of Cuba are free to live a free life, like people in Mexico and many other countries.
And I'm interested, Gladys, you now live in the U.S., so let's talk a little bit about your journey. So why did you leave Cuba? When did you leave Cuba? And what is it that drove you to move to the United States?
I grew up, I lived in the countryside. I was a country girl, and went to university in Havana. When I finished university, just during university and by working in Cuba the first few years after graduating, I just realized there's no future for me. In Cuba, you cannot buy a house, you cannot rent a house. I left in 1992. There was a big hope in young people like me, I was 24 at the time, that the reforms of the Soviet Union, the economic reforms and the separation and the collapse of the wall would bring reforms in Cuba. And it was a big disillusion for young people like me that were hoping for a little bit of freedom to come to Cuba after the collapse of the communist bloc. I realized that is not going to happen. Fidel Castro spoke very emphatically and just decided that Cuba was going to continue the communist path and that the Cuban people were going to be better off that way. And then I realized there's no future for me here, and there will be no future for my children.
And then how were you able to go to the U.S. and why did you choose Georgia in this case?
Well, every Cuban that leaves Cuba and is able to come to the United States, the first place to go is Miami, Florida. So that's what I did. I was able to, then when that happened in 1992, the regime, they have this, it's like a technique. Every time the situation gets difficult in Cuba and they feel like the people are going to rebel or complain about their dictatorship, they open up. Like they just, it's like a dam, they open, they leave a little bit, water leaves, a few people leave, and then they are able to stay for a few more years without trouble. That's what happened in 94. they lowered the age in which people could start traveling outside Cuba. Before then, you had to be older than 65 to be able to go and visit family that would invite you to visit them. And it was mostly done through the Red Cross. But in 92, they started opening up to younger. So I was able to get a letter of invitation from a Bulgarian woman that was the mother of one of my friends in school. And so she invited me to Bulgaria. The thesis was her daughter that had gone to school with me. I knew that I was never going to get to Bulgaria, and I think that she knew that I was never going to get to Bulgaria. I paid for that invitation. And so when the plane landed in Barajas in Spain, I asked for asylum in Spain. And then I came to the United States a few months later, for very legal means.
Yeah, at that point, yeah. And Gladys, since leaving Cuba and then ending up in the U.S., have you been back many times? Have you seen, Cuba over these last decades? And what has been your impression if you have gone back over the change these last years?
I have been back, and my family lives in Cuba. I went back 7 years after I left. I had done all my paperwork, and then I married an American. So I am an American citizen. But even though there are always restrictions visiting Cuba, if you have family in Cuba, you can go and visit. The situation in Cuba has never changed very much for the Cubans. Cubans have a ration card. The government feeds them. The government cures them in their hospitals. The government educates them. The Cuban people, they don't have the ability to start their own business, to open their own store, or to do their own street. Let's say they want to do a street cart, selling something. You see this in Mexico a lot, people selling fruit and things like that in the street. The farmers have restrictions to sell their products. Fishermen have restrictions to sell their products. The only owner in Cuba is the Cuban military. And they allow a few places. They starting in 10 years ago, they started allowing a few home restaurants where, let's say here in my home, I just cook and I put a few tables and I sell what I cook to the people that come and buy it. But how could a person have a restaurant? There is a ration card. There are no places where you can go and buy food to cook in your restaurant, to sell things in your stores. Everything is controlled by the government. Everything goes through the Cuban military. They're the ones that own the bank accounts, and they purchase products in stores that are only, products can only be bought with dollars. The Cuban people are paid in pesos. So in order to have dollars, you have to depend on a family member that have left Cuba that send you the dollars. 10% of that money gets taken away once it gets into the country by the government. And then the rest of the money is exchanged with a currency that doesn't really have any value, and it's just to purchase those stores. And regular Cuban people that do not have anybody that have left, and just like Mexican people that lived in the US, they send remittances to their families in Mexico. The Cuban people have lived, the ones that live a little more comfortable lives are the ones that family members that have left, unfortunately.
It seems to me, Gladys, that you're describing that people are very limited in the way in which they can purchase products, types of services, etc., through this rationing sort of system. How is it, in your opinion, on the psychology of the people there when they see people like foreigners come and then bring dollars or whatever other currency and are free to spend however they want in Havana or whatever other place, and then its own people can't do that? How is the psychology and impact
Well,
on it?
imagine this is a very difficult thing for the people that live in Cuba. The people that live in Cuba, we have been called by the regime, we have been called traitors, we have been called maggots, terrible words. They have told the Cuban people that we are the enemies of the revolution because we have deserted the country. But then they turn around and they have all the military and the upper echelons of the Communist Party in Cuba lives rich millionaire life, only that we bring back our family members. The Cuban people feel betrayed. And the Cuban people, for the first time in 62 years, have said, we don't want this system anymore. This is being basically a repudiation of leftist ideas all over the world. Cuba was used as an example of what a government could do for their people. And with this rebellion on the 11th June, the Cuban people have exposed how cruel the government is to its people. And imagine if you are a young person that is going to the school and is being told that the revolution is advance your life, make your life better, and make you a professional or give you a better way of living, and that the person that is leaving the country, that is your in school, that is your friend, that person is a traitor, that person is a maggot, is a traitor of your values. And then 7 years later, 5 years later, you see those people coming back into the country. And they're the only ones that can go to a hotel. They're the ones that can buy in stores that you cannot buy. They get access to restaurants you cannot go to. They can invite their families to go on a trip and pay with dollars or whatever the currency that they replace the dollars with. And so it's like a slap in the face of the Cubans that have been, if not supportive, at least silent against, for the and have stood up for the propaganda of the Cuban Communist Party. It's very sad because the people that have been loyal to the Communist Party just realize that they are being betrayed. And that includes not only the lower level people that are members of the Communist Party, but also the middle and lower level military, policemen. They go through the same problems that the rest. Money is only left for the 1%.
Gladys, like psychologically, I'm trying to figure out how that type of structure is generally maintained, right? So in my mind, when somebody tells you, hey, we're gonna provide and promise all these things to make sure that we as a nation or we as a group or we as a society, whatever, are a cohesive unit, right? It's going to include free healthcare, it's going to include stability, it's going to include free education, etc. Like, it seems to be a very sort of a pact that's involves a lot of promise and compromise, right? So how is it then that that those ways of trying to sell that or present that idea to its people, how do they think that will be the best way in which they assume everyone will be happy, right? Like,
well,
how do you explain the like I'm not trying to go in this in a psychoanalysis way, but I think it's important to understand that, because for me, I'm trying to imagine if someone is saying to you, we're going to give you all this, everything's going to be like this, you just gotta go with it. Where does the part of the convincing aspect of that come into play in your mind, like based on what you hear?
Well, I wasn't alive. I was born in '67, so I wasn't alive when Castro took power in '59. My mother was a teenager. The first thing that they do is you know, because we've seen leftist movements all over Latin America. We have seen them in Europe. And it's happening here in the United States. And right now, the race is being manipulated and used to divide the American people. First of all, these movements are supported and they are helped and advanced by middle class and the upper middle class. People with money and resources are the ones that they propose these kinds of leftist ideas. These movements don't come from the proletariat. They don't come from the people, the working class. They're busy working, trying to make a living, doing their thing, loving their country, being religious, taking care of their families. These are movements of the middle class and up. They are the ones that are trying to change societies and their structures. The promise is a fallacy, and we have seen it over and over again. It happened. Socialist bloc didn't work. It's happening in China. It only works for the Communist Party. It's happening in Cuba. It happened in Bolivia, in Central America, Salvador, Honduras, Nicaragua, Venezuela, and Colombia is now having some issues with this type of ideology. The idea that you put every single aspect of your life in the hands of a bureaucracy that will take care of your needs for food, for healthcare, for education, and that bureaucracy is going to be loyal to you once they have all the power over your life is a lie. And whoever is believing in that is they have no idea what they're signing up for.
I'm curious, Gladys, from your perspective and knowing, I don't want to overly generalize, but your general sentiment from Cuban people in general. Like I would have a generalization if I were to describe where I'm from and the people and things like that. But from your perspective and your general idea of the way you see your people from Cuba is like, what sort of inherent sort of values, what sort of things are important for people of Cuba in general as they aspire to have a certain way of life? For example, do most of the people desire to have a family? Are most of the people religious? Do they want to be entrepreneurs? I don't know. Could you give us kind of a contextualization from your opinion of how Cuban people are and what they generally desire?
If you were going to describe in general the Cuban people, they are very family oriented, and I think that we have a lot in common with Mexicans in that sense. The Cuban people, they, for the most part, they meet with their family members on Sundays. They take care of their aunts, their grandmothers, their great-grandmothers, their relatives. Everybody in the extended family is considered family, considered close family. And also the Cuban people are, they're good people, are hard. They're not aggressive, although we come off as intense because we speak very fast.
Se llama la pasión. Nada más.
Oh, yes. We speak very intensely. We have eye contact.
Está bien.
They're loud, and we are passionate about the things that we want to explain to others. But if you think about how much the Cuban people have put up with, they have humiliated themselves. They have been put on their knees by a government that lied to them and said that they were going to take care of their basic needs, and then turn around and live lavish lives on the money of the Cuban people by taking it away from the Cuban people. I would describe Cubans as very family oriented, not as religious, because the Castro regime have been very successful at taking anybody that would believe in any sort of religion. That was prosecuted and persecuted for a long time. And now, only after 1994, Castro allowed the Pope to come and visit, and then has allowed churches to function. But you have to wonder how the government and the church have been. How much do they eye on the Cuban people? You are marked. You have to understand that the Cuban people are under constant surveillance. Not because they have cameras. The Castro regime has established a block-by-block surveillance on the Cuban people. We have what is called the Committees for the Defense of the Revolution. And then that committee has a person that knows everybody in the block, who lives there, how many children they have, who visits, who comes and goes from the house. And that Committee for the Defense of the Revolution, which is in every block, is a person in your block. It's tied to the security, Seguridad Nacional, the like the FBI, the equivalent to the FBI in the United States. The security apparatus is in contact with the Comité de Defensa de la Revolución, and everybody's lives is known to the regime. You cannot do anything, say anything, believe in anything without people knowing it.
For me, it sounds so striking and bizarre that when foreigners go and visit Havana and they go, to different parts of Cuba, every time I hear someone going to Cuba, it's like, oh, it was so nice, and all the old cars and the music and the girls and the cigars and blah, blah, blah. It sounds so lavish. It sounds like a paradise, So like, how in the world is it that if foreigners go and visit and they have this beautiful kind of sexy experience of Havana and the Ernest Hemingway kind of idea of it, et cetera, like, how is it that they can go there and, are treated like kings and queens, but not understand all this you're talking about? How is that even possible?
Well, I think that the Cuban people they laugh at themselves. They have not really, they have taken the dictatorship that is pressed upon them with just a self, kind of making fun of themselves. They laugh at their necessities. They laugh at, and they're very friendly. And we are fascinated by anybody that comes from the outside, because it's a country that has been years. Imaginary walls have built around the country. Cubans cannot travel. If they leave, they have to go, and they try to escape. They go wherever they go. There are Cuban people everywhere, all around the world. With this event that happened in June 11, you have an understanding of how many people had left Cuba unscathed. There are people protesting in the Cuban embassies all over the world: Italy, Mexico, Bolivia, Argentina, Colombia, everywhere in Europe, Germany, Switzerland, Sweden, everywhere. Find a community of people have had the opportunity, and they have left. The people who have stayed inside, first of all, the first time this happened on June 11th, openly complain or criticize the regime. Now you're going to be called on. Somebody's going to tell on you, and you're going to be marked by the regime, and you cannot get a job. The government is only employer, and the government is the only one that can educate you. The government is the only one that can take care of you if you have a medical emergency. You do not want to have any runs in. So the Cuban people take it at stride. They just make fun of the situation. They make fun of the bread that they have to eat. It's a stale bread that is just being like, smells like roaches. And it just, they give you, for a family of 5, they give you like 3 pieces of bread. That's what you get because it's ration. And so basically the one humiliation after another. So the way that people in Cuba can cope with it is by making fun of it, by laughing about it. And they're naturally very friendly and curious about other people. So that's why the people that visit Cuba are so, first of all, they can go anywhere that the rest of the Cubans cannot go. They have access to restaurants and hotels. And Cuban people are educated, they're friendly, they like exchange of ideas, they like to know about the exterior, to know what's happening in the world. They're curious, they're smart. That's why people that go to Cuba, they don't bother just lifting the curtain and looking past the curtain. They go to the places that the regime allows, restaurants and that's that, and then they go home. Plus, a lot of people go to Cuba to have fun because young girls and boys like to make friends with somebody that have dollars, betters their lives. What I mean, it's a travesty. It's the same thing that happens in Thailand. Where poor people just befriend tourists, and tourists take advantage of the people's situation.
Unbelievable. This is just such a mind-blowing kind of phenomena. But
Devin, I have to clarify that not everybody that goes to Cuba goes in that.
No, of course not.
Yeah. Yes, they go
absolutely.
to enjoy. There is this idea of the Cuba before the revolution.
Right.
It was a country that was doing very well economically, even though we had a regime. We had a golpe de Estado by Batista. Batista was not a legal government. They were there. How do you say golpe de Estado in English?
Golpe de Estado?
Was when a regime is a military regime that doesn't follow bureaucratic rule. But Cuba was a republic that was successful. People were successful. If you look at the footage from the 1950s, you see it was a good life. It was relaxed.
Yeah, right.
Yes, there was poverty. I'm from the countryside. There was a lot of poverty, and there were places where there was no electricity. But it would have happened eventually without the Cuban Revolution. It would have happened naturally.
Yeah.
That people would have bettered their lives. Because, as we know, and it's been proven over and over again, only thing that can better human beings, exchange of ideas, freedom of speech, and open and the only thing that better human beings.
Yeah, absolutely. It's just, like we have an innate ability inside of us. Not ability, I would say we have an innate desire more than anything just to express, right? I think more than anything, being human, we desire the just natural state of just expression, right? For in all facets, right? And for any of that way of it being kind of suppressed in any way really kind of contracts our internal type of energies or internal type of emotions, and that can be worse in the long run because that can lead to certain issues of anxiety and depression and many other things. So if we are being told no for something, we can't be essentially us. I mean, that is just a terrible state of being, so I just really can't imagine. And guys, this is just a fascinating conversation. I just want to ask you maybe just a couple more things. One of them is out of curiosity. Do people in Cuba, how do they see someone like Che Guevara? Like, because when you go to rock concerts in other parts of the world, or you go to, you go to some sort of shop and someone behind the counter is selling you something, you may see someone wearing this Che Guevara shirt and look so cool and, like a bad boy or a bad girl or however you want to put that. But do people actually from Cuba see someone like him as, wow, he was a great guy who changed our country, in your opinion?
Well, you have to understand that the Cuban people are under a constant attack when it comes to manipulating their information. The Cuban people are not free to go and get any books that they want at the library. As just recently, the internet was allowed in Cuba. They couldn't say no anymore. And it has created problems for the Cuban government. You see, when you're in Cuba, you have been bombarded with ideology, communist ideology at school since you are in kindergarten. I can tell you how I decided to leave. The moment that I made the decision to leave Cuba was the moment I was walking by a daycare center. And little kids, 2, 3, 4 years old, they were playing in the playground in a building in Havana, and they were dressed like the heroes of the revolution, and their faces were painted with chalk, dark chalk, just to imitate the leaders of the revolution, Che Guevara, Camilo Cienfuegos, and Fidel Castro, Raúl Castro. And then it was bizarre. It was very upsetting to me, even growing up under the ideology. It was just putting on me since I was a child. When I stood there as a 22-year-old and looked at those children, something inside me told me this is so wrong. A child belongs to their parents, and their heroes should be the heroes that they want their child out and follow, not be imposed by a regime on children to follow certain ways of being or modes of thinking that have been imposed by some political leaders on the crust of society. It was so wrong, it just disgusted. And at that moment, I said to myself, I cannot have children here. I have to leave. I have to go.
Yeah. Yeah.
When the Cuban people, they don't know anything about their leaders. The lives of their leaders is a secret. Fidel Castro was married the whole time. I didn't find out that Fidel Castro had a wife until I came to the United States. I had no idea. The Cuban people didn't know. He kept his wife secret. Would not meet in front of any personality that came to visit. Not publicly introduce his wife. Not show himself in public with his wife. Wife was just kept as a state secret. Nobody in Cuba knows what is the private life of. So people in Cuba don't know the reality of their history past 1959. They know it if they have lived it, or it's being passed around by verbally, or people that have left have told stories. But the people in Cuba, they don't really know that there is a possibility that Camilo Cienfuegos was killed by Fidel Castro. There's a chance that he ordered to kill Camilo Cienfuegos. He ordered Camilo Cienfuegos to go and squash some rebellion that happened in the eastern side of the country, and it looks like Camilo didn't do what he ordered, and so all of a sudden Camilo disappeared. They don't know that Che Guevara was the biggest murderer in the beginning of the revolution. He was in La Cabaña killing people without due process. And there is a story of a young boy, 12 years old, that was killed by Che Guevara. And what I've heard from people that were there or have acted, that the people that died by the hand of Che Guevara would die yelling "Viva Cristo Rey." You know that phrase.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Probably if you live in Mexico.
Yeah.
They were calling, they were declaring their faith only to their God. And Che Guevara had no mercy in a young boy, and no mercy in those people that they have no mercy, and that's very clear now for the world to see that they have no mercy on the Cuban people, the people that they say they represent. And let me tell you, Devin, the people that came out on the streets, they were not the elite. They were not the people that lived better in Cuba. These people that came out on the streets were students and the people that have nothing. They are the most dispossessed. We are talking a house with no water, no bathroom. Some of them have to go to the bathroom in a bucket. We're talking about places that have no street, where the waters that come out of your faucet mix together with your drinking water. These people have nothing, and they say we have nothing to lose anymore. And that's why they were yelling, we have no fear anymore. No tenemos miedo.
Unbelievable.
They lost their fear for the repression of the Cuban regime.
Yeah, they're just sick of it, I think, and the thing is, and I encourage all of our viewers and all of our listeners, really immerse yourself, I think more than anything, to know about these sort of realities as they really are, right? Like Gladys' story, Gladys' insights and revelations about her home country. I really encourage all of our viewers and listeners, really seek out more than anything, because sometimes we just may not be exposed to the correct information, but seek out really, really good information, good sources, good insights from people who are really knowledgeable about these situations, have these experiences, and know the realities on the ground. I think more than anything, like, if you've listened to this whole episode, you should really understand that this is a real situation that Gladys is sharing, and a history that Gladys is sharing, and that we really need to do, all of us, our best, and to think a little more critically on what the world is and what it's really like, and really, be there for those who really want a true sense of freedom for their life, who want to be them, who want to be themselves, who want to, embrace life, live life, love life. We all want that in the end of the day. We're all the same. We all possess the same kind of desires, I think, right? And
Absolutely.
If any one of us has an aspect of that taken away, it really can really damage us, right? And I think if anyone out there who has true kind of empathy and compassion and wants to help their fellow man and woman some way, they should really try to do their best in the best way that they can to help. So Gladys, I thank you so much for being on this amazing episode.
Could I say something?
Absolutely, please. Absolutely.
Since you are in Mexico, you're living in Mexico, this is a cautionary tale to the Mexican people.
All right.
The leftist ideas are cantos de sirena. It's like sirens, songs from mermaids. Be careful, don't follow the songs of the mermaids.
Yeah, right.
The leftist ideas are ideas that eventually leave people entrapped in slavery. You see it in China with the Uyghur population. You see it in Cuba with the whole entire country. You see it, you saw it in the socialist bloc, in the communist bloc. You've seen it in Nicaragua and Venezuela. Don't be distracted by what they tell you they want for you. Be careful, Mexican people, because once you put your freedoms in the hands of politicians that are trying to enchant you, you may never get those freedoms back. It's a cautionary tale for anybody that is listening to me in South America, in Central America, and in the United States. Don't believe in leftist ideas. Leftist ideas are very well intended. They sound fantastic. They look good, but in reality, they lead humans to less freedom and less self-fulfillment. You end up being slaves of a minority that has all the control over you. Don't listen to the mermaid song. Be aware that they're lies, and that if you want to be free, you have to look for a better solution. Rule of law, fight discrimination and corruption. That is actually the path for the people that want to better their lives. But it's not communism and it's not socialism. Whoever is selling you these ideas, they are lying to you, because it has been proven through history that in the end up murdering people, yelling people, just like it's happening in are disappearing, or students are put in jail with no due process. Be careful. Fight for your freedoms and don't believe in songs from mermaids. They're lying. They're trying to distract you.
That's a very powerful insight and powerful statement. I think we need to really understand that and really pay attention to that. And that's a very incredible message, guys. And so I thank you so incredibly much for this conversation today, Gladys. I thank you for speaking for, also the, Cuban people, and it's amazing, really. I know people from Cuba as well, like other people, and they're great human beings. They're great. They have a beautiful culture. The cigars are great, of course. The music's fantastic. So I really thank you for sharing this very amazing conversation with our viewers and listeners, Gladys. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Devin. Thank you very much.
And we will see you all on the next. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
And viva Cuba libre.
Viva Cuba libre siempre, ¿verdad?
Yes.
Thank you so much, Gladys. And we'll see you all on the next episode. Take care, everyone.